The numbers don't lie, but people still pretend not to see them. Marriage isn't just declining, it's collapsing. And the most unsettling part isn't that men are quietly slipping away from the altar. It's that women keep asking why, as if the answer hasn't been written in plain sight, carved into the statistics, screamed through generations of silent suffering. There's a strange comfort in denial, I guess. It's easier to ask, where have all the good men gone, than to face the truth that those men didn't disappear. They simply walked away. Deliberately. Calmly. Rationally. Because sooner or later every man learns that stepping into a burning building doesn't make you brave, just ignorant of the flames. And that's the part that hurts people the most. Men aren't walking away emotionally. They're walking away mathematically. Cold calculations. Risk evaluations. Pattern recognition dressed as instinct. It's not fear. It's not weakness. It's not bitterness. It's clarity. And clarity is dangerous to a system built on the assumption that men will keep showing up even when it destroys them. Look back far enough and you'll see a time when marriage offered men something real: stability, partnership, purpose. But look at the landscape now. Ask any young man today what marriage represents. You won't hear the word love. You won't hear security. You'll hear a word that terrifies every rational thinker: risk. Not small risk. Not manageable risk. Catastrophic risk. The kind of risk that can erase a decade of your life with a single accusation, a single bad month, a single moment of disillusionment from someone who once promised forever. Men see it. They've been seeing it for decades. But it's only now, with information flowing freely, stories spreading globally, and suffering no longer hidden behind polite smiles, that men have finally connected the dots. And once a man understands the pattern, he stops playing the game. People love to claim men have commitment issues. But men commit to things all the time. Jobs, missions, ideas, passions, responsibilities. Men commit to things that require discipline, sacrifice, and consistency. The truth is simpler than anyone wants to admit. Men aren't afraid of commitment. They're afraid of committing to a system where they carry all the responsibility and absorb all the consequences, while having almost no protection, no voice, and no benefit. And it's the silence that speaks the loudest. The silence of men who saw their fathers lose everything in divorce court. The silence of sons who watched their mothers leave and take the home, the children, the stability. The silence of brothers who were told they were unworthy after giving everything. Silence doesn't mean men don't understand. It means they've understood too well. Every generation of men before now walked blindly into marriage because they were told it was their duty, their purpose, their proof of maturity. But this generation is different. This generation watched what duty did to their fathers. They watched men who did everything right end up sleeping alone in small apartments, writing checks to people who betrayed them, begging courts just to see their own children. It's not cynicism. It's observation. When a pattern repeats enough, it becomes reality. And reality doesn't need your approval to exist. Here's the truth nobody wants to face. Men have stopped believing that marriage is for them. Not because they hate love, but because they've watched what love turns into when lawyers get involved. Not because they hate women, but because they've seen what happens when the system incentivizes leaving instead of staying. Men aren't running from commitment. They're running from consequences they didn't create and can't prevent. Younger men especially see marriage the way previous generations saw chain smoking. Something their fathers did that destroyed them. Something society once romanticized, but that now looks like self-inflicted damage. Something you only do if you're willing to pretend the warnings aren't real. And women keep asking, why won't men settle down anymore? Because settling down isn't settling down. It's stepping into a battlefield with no armor. Women ask, why won't men get married like they used to? Because men finally understand that, like they used to, no longer exists. Women ask, why are men so hesitant? Because hesitation is what happens when pain becomes predictable. This shift isn't temporary. It's not a trend. It's an exodus. A quiet, steady, unshakable migration away from an institution that punishes men for participating and shames them for refusing. And what terrifies society most is that men are not leaving angrily. They're leaving indifferently. Because when a man stops fighting, stops arguing, stops trying to be understood, that's when you know his decision is permanent. And here we are. Men haven't disappeared. They haven't gone extinct. They haven't become weak or confused. They've simply chosen themselves. They've chosen peace over chaos, logic over blind obligation, self-preservation over sacrifice. And the world isn't ready for the consequences of that choice. I've sat across from men whose lives were split cleanly into two timelines, before marriage and after losing everything because of it. And there's a heaviness in their eyes that doesn't come from heartbreak. It comes from the realization that the system they trusted was designed to bleed them dry the moment love stopped being convenient for someone else. You hear enough of these stories, you stop calling them coincidences. You start calling them patterns. There was a man in his early 50s who came to me after his divorce finalized. 23 years of marriage. 2 kids. Faithful. Hardworking. The kind of man who thought love was proof against the world's cruelty. His wife cheated. Not once. Not in a moment of weakness. It was an affair that lasted years, hidden under weekly girls' nights and unexplained overtime. When he found out, he thought the truth would protect him. Instead, the truth became irrelevant the moment they walked into court. He lost the house he built, the custody he fought for, the retirement he saved, and paid alimony to the woman who had already left him emotionally long before she left him physically. After our last session, his son, 24, ambitious, quiet, pulled me aside and said, "I'm never getting married." Not after seeing what it did to him. He didn't say it with anger. He said it with certainty. Like someone who watched a car explode and decided never to sit in one again. Another man, mid-30s, told me about the day he ran into the girl he once begged to notice him back in high school. Back then, she laughed at him, told her friends, made him a joke. He carried that humiliation for years, and life, in its strange symmetry, brought her back, older, divorced, 3 kids, tired, suddenly seeing him in a new light. Her messages sounded like interest, but tasted like desperation. "You've grown so much. You're not like other men. I wish I had appreciated someone like you before." He blocked her after a week. Not out of cruelty, out of memory, out of self-respect, out of understanding what she really wanted, a stable landing spot, not a partner. These stories aren't rare. They're the quiet background noise of the modern relationship landscape. Men who were mocked in their 20s suddenly being called mature and responsible by the same people who once dismissed them. Men who were told they weren't enough, now being told they're exactly what someone needs. But men remember. They remember the years of invisibility, the rejection, the contempt disguised as standards. And they're not signing up to be someone's second chance when they were never given a first. I remember a client in his early 40s who dated a woman with a strict 50-50 mindset. Every dinner, every trip, every coffee, split to the cent, equality, she said. He respected that. He admired it even. Until her car broke down. Suddenly, equality shifted into tradition. She expected him to pay for repairs because that's what a real man does. What she meant was, equality when it benefits me, tradition when it saves me. He ended things the same day. She was shocked, confused. She couldn't understand why he wouldn't step up. But that's the thing. Men are tired of stepping up when the rules keep changing depending on who benefits. And then there are the quiet tragedies. The men who opened up, shared their fears, revealed their traumas, only to be mocked with lines like, "Who hurt you?" or "Stop being dramatic." I knew a man who lost custody of his daughter despite being the more stable parent. He tried to talk about his pain online. The comments were brutal. "You must have done something." There are 2 sides to every story. Men don't lose custody for no reason. Except they do. Constantly. Predictably. Systematically. One man told me the moment he gave up. Not on love, but on the system surrounding it. He caught his wife cheating. Video, texts, dates, everything. He thought proof would matter. It didn't. She got the house he inherited from his grandmother, half his savings, and a chunk of his monthly income. The court didn't care about betrayal. It cared about paperwork. He looked at me and said, "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. That tone. The calmness, the finality, that's the tone I hear from men everywhere now. They're not raging. They're resigning. Men see the dating apps. They see the profiles demanding 6-figure incomes, 6-foot height, no kids, endless travel, emotional availability, financial stability, and a resilience strong enough to absorb constant criticism. One man showed me a profile of a woman in her late 30s with 3 children, writing, "If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve my best." He put his phone down and said, "Or I could just stay home and play my guitar." And honestly, because the modern dating world tells men they're not good enough while simultaneously demanding they solve every problem. It tells them they're privileged while taking their resources. It tells them they're toxic while depending on their strength. It tells them to open up while laughing when they do. So men adapt. They withdraw. They detach. They choose peace over participation. And that choice isn't made out of fear. It's made out of memory. There comes a moment in a man's life when the noise finally becomes unbearable. Not the loud noise, the silent one. The constant hum of being blamed for everything, expected to fix everything, responsible for everyone yet protected by no one. It's the realization that no matter what he does, he will be wrong in someone's eyes. And that realization changes him. It hardens him, not into bitterness, but into clarity. You see it in men who give until they're empty. Men who try to communicate only to be told they're overreacting. Men who try to lead only to be told they're controlling. Men who try to be vulnerable only to be told they're weak. Men who try to be strong only to be told they're toxic. Every path is a trap. Every decision is criticized. Every standard he sets is condemned, unless it benefits someone else. And eventually he asks himself a simple question: what do I gain from this? That's the moment everything shifts. Because men are logical creatures. They may love deeply. They may fight fiercely. But logic is their compass. And when logic points to the exit, emotional attachment can't hold them in place. They leave. Not in anger. Not in chaos. They leave quietly, like someone slipping out of a burning room while everyone else argues about who lit the match. I've heard men say things that stay with me long after the conversation ends. Not dramatic phrases. Simple ones. Cold ones. True ones. I don't want to be punished for trying. I'm tired of being the villain in stories I didn't write. I just want peace. I'd rather be alone than be someone's emotional landfill. I don't trust a system that can destroy me for doing everything right. These aren't the words of men who hate love. These are the words of men who've realized love is no longer the foundation of modern marriage. Lawyers are. Courts are. Paperwork is. The system is. Love is just the decoration placed on top to make the contract look humane. I've seen men crumble under the weight of everyone's expectations. A client once told me he felt like the CEO of a collapsing company, one he didn't control, one he couldn't restructure, one where every decision was made by committees he wasn't allowed to sit in, yet he was solely responsible when things went wrong. He worked, provided, repaired, protected. But every failure, every frustration, every unmet need was somehow his fault. His voice cracked when he said, "I'm responsible for everything and in control of nothing." And when he finally walked away, his ex acted blindsided. She couldn't understand why he was giving up. But men don't give up. Men endure until the pain becomes indistinguishable from suffocation. This is what modern relationships do to men. They turn devotion into disadvantage. They turn providing into obligation. They turn effort into entitlement. They turn love into leverage. And then society asks why men no longer participate. Why they opt out. Why they choose careers, hobbies, solitude, travel, gym memberships, friendships, anything but marriage. As if it's a mystery. As if the answer isn't written on every man's face who's lived through the consequences of a broken system. Men are tired of being emotional service stations where others come to refuel while never giving anything back. Tired of giving support they never receive. Tired of being told to open up only to be mocked when they do. Tired of being compared to fictional men who exist only in fantasies. Tired of being invisible until they become useful. tired of being demanded to provide a lifestyle that the demander wouldn't provide in return. And the emotional weight builds. It builds when he sees marriage reduced to a contract with escape clauses he can't use but she can weaponize. It builds when he sees his friends lose children they love because of courtroom biases. It builds when he sees men labeled losers until they succeed, then suddenly labeled intimidating. It builds when he sees men shamed for playing video games, yet those games offer more fairness, more rewards, more clarity than any modern relationship. It builds when he sees women preach independence while demanding provision. It builds when he sees masculinity treated like a disease until it becomes convenient. And there is only so much weight a man can carry before he sets it down and walks away. This isn't anger. This is exhaustion. A deep, ancestral exhaustion passed from father to son, uncle to nephew, brother to brother. A quiet resignation that echoes louder than any argument. Men no longer explode. They fade out. Silent. Certain. Done. And in that silence, the world finally hears the truth. Men aren't choosing loneliness. They're choosing peace. They're not avoiding responsibility. They're avoiding exploitation. They're not afraid of commitment. They're afraid of commitment without protection. They're not leaving love behind. They're leaving behind a system that punishes them for loving. Because a man will fight for love. He will bleed for love. He will sacrifice for love. But he will not destroy himself for it. Not anymore. At some point, after all the stories, after all the losses, after all the warnings whispered from one generation of men to the next, there comes a moment of stillness. A moment where the noise fades, the battles end, and a man stands alone with the truth he spent years avoiding. And that truth is this: peace is not found in promises, or paperwork, or performance. Peace is found in choosing a life that doesn't require you to sacrifice your dignity just to be tolerated. That's the part people don't understand. Men didn't give up on marriage because they gave up on women. They didn't give up because they're weak, or afraid, or resentful. They gave up because they finally understood that modern marriage demands the soul of a man but gives him no sanctuary in return. It asks everything of him and offers very little back except conditional affection and legal vulnerability. There's a strange liberation that happens when a man realizes he doesn't have to destroy himself to be loved. When he realizes peace isn't selfish. When he realizes solitude isn't loneliness. When he realizes his life doesn't need to orbit around someone who sees him as a backup plan, a provider, or a safety net. He begins to breathe again. Not shallow, anxious breaths, but deep, steady, grounded breaths. The kind that come from knowing you finally stepped off a battlefield you were never meant to die on. I've watched men discover this freedom. At first, it scares them. They think something's wrong. They think they're supposed to feel empty without a relationship. They think society must be right, something must be broken in them. But slowly, the truth unfolds. They sleep better. They laugh more. Their shoulders relax. Their minds quiet down. They begin to enjoy their own company in a way they never could before, because they're no longer living in a home where their every expression is judged and their every mistake is magnified. One man told me after his divorce finally settled, "I wake up and it's quiet." Not the kind of quiet that hurts. The kind that heals. He wasn't celebrating the end of love. He was celebrating the end of a war he never agreed to fight. And that's something most people don't understand. Men crave connection, yes. But above connection, they crave peace. And when the cost of connection is the destruction of that peace, they walk away. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Simply, unmistakably, permanently. Modern society doesn't know what to do with men who no longer beg for approval. Men who no longer chase validation. Men who no longer sacrifice themselves to keep a relationship afloat. For decades, men were told they were disposable. Providers, protectors, paychecks, expected to give without receiving, to endure without complaint, to stay through pain that would be unacceptable if reversed. But now, men have learned something that terrifies those who benefited from their silence. A man who values himself can't be controlled. A man who sees the game won't play it. A man who learns the truth won't unlearn it. A man who finds peace won't abandon it to appease someone else's chaos. And when enough men learn that, the entire structure begins to shake. People keep asking why marriage rates are collapsing, but they refuse to look at the architecture of the building men are walking away from. They refuse to see the cracks, the imbalances, the incentives, the dangers. They refuse to ask what must be rebuilt. They only ask why men won't keep walking inside. As if self-destruction is a virtue. As if self-preservation is a flaw. But a man who chooses not to drown is not a coward. He's awake. And that's what this generation of men is becoming: awake. Aware. Unapologetically committed to their own well-being. They've realized they are allowed to build a life on their terms. A life where their stability isn't constantly jeopardized. A life where their masculinity isn't demonized. A life where their contributions aren't taken for granted. A life where love isn't leveraged against them. Some say this is selfish. But what do you call decades of men giving their all to people who never intended to give anything back? What do you call a system that demands sacrifice from one side and accountability from the other? If choosing fairness is selfish, then selfishness has become another word for sanity. And maybe that's the lesson here. Maybe the real shift isn't that men have turned away from marriage, it's that they've turned toward themselves. For the first time in a long time, men are asking, what about my happiness? My safety? My peace? My future? And they're realizing those questions aren't wrong. They're necessary. Because the truth is simple, powerful, and unsettling. Men haven't abandoned love. They've abandoned the version of love that destroys them. They haven't rejected commitment. They've rejected commitment without reciprocity. They haven't lost faith in women. They've lost faith in systems built to punish them for being men. And until the world is willing to confront these truths honestly, the exodus will continue. The gap will widen. The silence will grow. Men will keep choosing freedom over fear, peace over pain, logic over obligation. Maybe one day trust can be rebuilt. Maybe one day the system will recognize the value of the men it has taken for granted. Maybe one day marriage will mean partnership again instead of liability. But that day is not today. For now, men are sending a message. Calmly, quietly, unmistakably. We're done sacrificing ourselves for a system that sees us as disposable. A man who protects his peace is not broken. He's not bitter. He's not lost. He's finally found himself.